On August 4th of 2019, a 24-year-old man was hanging out at the bar with a friend and his sibling. All of a sudden, this man snapped and went to his car and got ready to commit an atrocity. This is the case of Connor Betts. Hello, friend, and welcome to High Time Crime. My name's Joel, and on here I specialize in true crime and also playing the fiddle. But anyway, today we're going over a very twisted case that I'm still having a hard time wrapping my head around and understanding. Connor Stephen Betts was born on October 28th of 1994 to Moira Kofer Betts and Stephen Betts in Ohio. He had a younger sibling named Megan, and this was reported by a lot of news articles, but Megan was apparently actually a transgender man and went by Jordan, so out of respect, we'll be referring to them by Jordan. I believe this to be the case, though it's a bit hazy as to what the truth there is. But to be completely honest, I couldn't find a crazy amount of information on who Connor was, but there was some things I did find. From an early age, he began reading and loved it. One of the first books he read was Harry Potter. At the age of 11, he got to meet his favorite author at a book signing. It was a guy named Brian Jakes, who was known for his series Castaways of the Flying Dutchman and Redwall. Connor also, from a young age, started swimming, and he was a Boy Scout. As Connor started to get older, he became very infatuated with fiction and history books, and he also started to get into politics. We'll discuss that a bit later. Now, Connor in middle school and high school is where some problems really started to arise. When he was about 13 to 14-ish, he was friends with a girl in middle school, and she claimed that Connor said he really wanted to hurt girls and that he was afraid of his own thoughts. Connor showed this girl his poems that he created about killing people. She told him that he needs to get help. Eventually, he supposedly threatened this girl, and so she cut off all contact with him and told her parents. Her parents went to the police station to give a statement, but nothing was done about him. A bit before all of this happened, he really started to become infatuated with killers and violence, specifically mass shootings. Also, it was said that when Connor was either an 8th grader or 9th grader, his sibling had a friend over. Connor ended up getting into an argument with both of them and actually strangled the friend. Apparently, his mother had to intervene and the friend never told anyone. In 2012, Connor was a sophomore and attended Bellbrook High School. Now, supposedly Connor was considered to be an awful person to many people, and it's said that he threatened to kill women and also attack the school. Some reports say that he was bullied for the most part. It doesn't really appear to be that way, though. According to some, most people avoided Connor, and they said that he would say shocking things only to get a reaction, and that he enjoyed making people feel scared. That year, though, Connor created some sort of hit list that was found in a bathroom on the school grounds. It's unclear exactly how many people were on the lists, but a news report came out about it, so I'll play that.
There were fewer students and more security today at Bellbrook High School. The discovery of a threat prompted an alert. Jordan Burgess shows you how parents and administrators handled the concern.
The flag is raised high above Bellbrook High School, same as always. But even if the routines remain unchanged, there's no mistaking this is anything but a normal day.
Kind of a ridiculous state today, right? We have this type of level of potential outrage or violence going on with young folks.
A threat scrawled on a boys' bathroom wall inside the high school made Monday as much a lesson in surveillance and security as it was in science or social studies. The line of cars filing into the parking lot wasn't as long as usual. Some students showed up to drop off their assignments and left, telling us they didn't want to take any chances.
I can tell just walking the halls there aren't as many kids.
But police didn't leave anything to chance. Inside, officers roamed the halls along with students. Lockers were searched just in case.
You still got to take it all seriously because you don't know for sure what's in people's heads anymore.
While some parents preferred their kids safe at home, others felt the school was the best place to be.
Today's probably the most unlikely day of anything happening. Have to be a little bit more tomorrow.
That's why the heightened security will be in place for the near future, at least until the person behind the threat is caught. The superintendent says the search is being narrowed thanks to the building's cameras.
Now, I believe after this, Connor wasn't exactly punished, even though one of the officers said a few days before that he would be punished to the furthest extent of the law. In reality, it's not clear as to what happened to Connor afterwards. I do know that he got taken off of the school bus by a police officer, but where Connor went or what they talked to him about isn't known. This is because he was a juvenile at the time, and the sheriff's office wasn't able to release documents about it because they were destroyed. Also, apparently the list came first, and Connor was suspended for that, but then not long after, the hit list came. Within a few months, Connor had been able to go back to the high school like nothing ever happened, and even played the baritone on the marching band. In his 11th grade year, or 2012, he was a part of his local church's production of Willy Wonka with one of his best friends, Chase Beard. He'll come into play a bit later. In August of 2012, Connor had become a member of his high school's drama club. By his senior year, he began dating a girl named Lindsay, and she revealed some pretty interesting things. Connor always had caffeine pills and energy drinks with him because he had trouble sleeping. Lindsay said Connor told her that dark, animal-like shadows tormented him during bedtime, that he suffered from psychosis since a very young age, and that he was afraid he was developing schizophrenia. Lindsay said Connor would cry to her sometimes and say that he's afraid of himself and afraid that he was going to hurt someone one day. Eerie, but things will only get progressively worse. Lindsay also said that she always knew something was off about Connor, and when she enrolled into the high school her sophomore year, 2 years before, she heard stories about Connor's hit list. Also, some friends of Lindsay's told her that Connor had pushed one of his ex-girlfriends into a river, and he had screamed at another one while he pinned her against the wall. But regardless of that, Lindsay found herself within the same friend group, and she was drawn to Connor. Lindsay said he was funny and charismatic in his own way, but she said that he started to talk a lot about the dark, evil things he was hearing in his mind, and that sometimes halfway through a conversation, he would randomly go elsewhere, and it was like he wasn't really there. Eventually, Lindsay and Connor would break up. It's not very clear as to why. But Connor would graduate high school, and then afterwards, the timeline becomes a little hazy. I know for a fact that he started to attend Wright State University for a brief period of time, and he was the lowest bass singer in the school's men's ensemble. While at the college, he was enrolled in the psychology department and sociology department. Connor's fall semester of 2013, he was placed on academic probation due to bad grades. The only class he passed was chorus. Only a few months later, in January of 2014, he decided to drop out of college, and he sent an email to his academic advisor and told them that he has to withdraw from the college because he does not yet have the maturity to handle it. Between 2014 to 2016, Connor would begin 3 different jobs, one as a gas station clerk, one as a retail freight handle, and another as a landscaper. It's apparently around this time that he began hanging out with a guy named Ethan Colley. We'll also bring him up later. But Connor and Ethan began doing some pretty hard drugs. This included acid, and they would also smoke some weed, and they did this 4 to 5 times a week, if not more. In December of 2015, only 2 months after Connor turned 21, he accidentally drove his car off the road on a rainy Sunday a bit before 4 a.m. Apparently, police officers said that he had been drinking, but he wasn't impaired, and so they didn't give him a sobriety test, which I find very bizarre. First responders took him to the hospital, and he was released later in the day. Now, only about 5 months later, in May of 2016, Connor was yet again driving, but this time he was driving his buddy Ethan's car, and Ethan was the passenger. At about 3 a.m. on a Thursday, the police pulled them over, and Connor was obviously drunk, so much to the point where he could barely stand. He told the police that he had trouble standing due to the previous accident. The police decided to take Connor down to the station, and he blew a .091 on his breathalyzer test. Eventually, he was released to his best friend Chase, and he had to go to court for a OVI charge, or operating a vehicle while intoxicated. The charge was pleaded down to failure to maintain physical control, and Connor was told that he had to go to a 3-day weekend intervention program instead of jail. He basically got really lucky 2 times in a row. In April of 2017, Connor applied to Sinclair Community College for the fall semester. Now, in 2017, he was really hanging out with one of his friends named Ian Himes. I'm unsure of who their entire friend group was, but I know that Connor and Ian were good friends. Ian said that they'd hang out basically every day, playing pool, smoking hookah, and other things. Those other things weren't very good for you, but Ian said that Connor was very much into and was smoking it pretty much every day. Ian said they'd also do a ton of coke, but Connor couldn't afford it. They also liked Adderall or Vyvanse, and this was to keep them up for as long as possible. Now, during 2017, Ian had a notebook at his house that Connor would constantly write in, and I'm gonna go over a bunch of things he wrote because some of it is telling. For starters, Connor's handwriting is very interesting and not super neat, so deciphering what he writes sometimes is a bit challenging. On this page, he writes, "Hail Lucifer, Lightbringer." A lot of the words on this page are very sloppy, but there is something interesting that he wrote. "Strike fear into the hearts of the children of God. Show them the hell that waits below." On another one, he writes the names of a few bands, such as Linkin Park or Yellow Card, and a rapper like Tech9. He also wrote Wake and Bake, you know what that means. Hit the Floor, which might be a reference to a song called Bodies by Drowning Pool. He wrote Seek and Destroy, and just a bunch of other random things. On this page, he once again writes the names of a few bands, such as Guns N' Roses or 3 Days Grace, and he also wrote Animal I Have Become. Below it, it's a bit hard to see because the paper is bent weird, but it says, 15 of fame, only by the gun, go for the high something something, current record 37, Virginia Tech. And this is referencing the Virginia Tech Massacre done by Sung-Hee Cho. It also says gold digger, grave digging. On this page, he wrote, "This human body has so many stupid limits." On this page, there's a lot of writing, so I'll try to decipher some of it. He says, Dracula, Satan laughing spreads, slander, Hail Mary, the virgin whore, beast of darkness caught up from fiery pits, armies massing soon to shed blood, the struggle eternal lying for souls to fuel their war machines, order versus chaos, good versus evil, a matter of perspective, the chosen champions of their cause, some are chosen, some choose, champions clash. I am the servant of the serpent evil incarnate, something consumer, light destroyer, fueled by hate, rage my strength, disgust my shield. I stand against the light, darkest crusader, To inspire terror and strike back, die in flames, take all you can, slaves eternal, slaughtered for Satan. Their screams, music, their pain, my pleasure. May the night reign eternal. When I fall, I know I have earned my grace. Nocturnal dominion, the light forever eclipsed. A champion of wrath, predatory state, to hunt and to kill my greatest escape. Now, this is the most interesting thing that Connor wrote, and it was directed towards Ian, asking him basically if they should go shoot people at a college. Bro, we should go to a weekend at the University of Dayton, geeked as f***, and see if we can go hunting, you know? LOL, yeah, I'm down. LMAO, we take a person, and convince them to come with us, and then poof, gone. LOL, down? I don't know what that writes, but then it says swag, you and me. No girlies, GFs, okay? Hit them bitches with a charm bomb, LOL. And that requires us doing us and not us plus Sarah. Ian also said that Connor would talk about killers that he saw in the news, but it usually was in context, that he never randomly brought them up. Connor would eventually complete the fall semester of college, and he signed up for all of 2018 as well. In 2018, and it may have been a bit earlier, Connor was a part of some bands. The particular type of music that he and his bandmates made were, awful. I don't mean to be rude or anything, but the genre is called grind, and it's a subgenre of heavy metal that's like gore grind. Gore grind has themes of death, gore, and things of that nature. Grind is the exact same thing, but it's about gruesome acts to women, if you get my gist. Connor was in a band called the Menstrual Munchies, and they got booked a few times to perform. But a few of the band's songs' names were 6 Ways of Female Butchery and of a Teenage Corpse. Yikes. One of Connor's bandmates, Jesse, said that Connor was a loner who was depressed, and that Connor had told him about the hit list in high school and how he wanted to kill and skin people. Jesse also said that one time Connor brought a handgun on tour and told the other bandmates that they should rob gas stations. One of the other things Jesse said was how they had a recent gig and Connor contacted people who went to the show and asked them to send him money on PayPal. Obviously, Connor was getting worse and worse as the days went by, but things are only really getting started. Now, Connor and his family were pretty interesting. Connor liked guns and owned guns. His family knew this, his friends knew this. He also, on a few occasions, said something about mass shootings that happened, and so did his father. Connor, on December 17th of 2018, tweeted, "This is America, guns on every corner. Guns in every house, no freedom but that to kill." A few years earlier, in 2015, his father posted on Facebook, "Let's not repeat it," and this was in response to a video titled "Guns with History," posted by States United to prevent gun violence, and a social experiment they did. Connor's dad also posted on December 15th of 2012 saying, "Yeah, there must be a correlation, right?" And it says, 34 in Switzerland, 52 in Canada, 58 in Israel, 21 in Sweden, 42 in West Germany, 10,728 in the United States. God bless America. And that's pertaining to gun deaths per year in the year 2011. This post was originally made because of the Sandy Hook school shooting. A guy named John replied to Connor's father and said, "Please stop using this tragedy to support your own personal agenda for or against guns, political parties, religion, God, etc. To do so just makes you, yes, all of you, on both sides, look like petty, hateful, tone-deaf, crisis carpet bagging and bastards. 20 kids died here, and all you can do is talk politics? You thoughtless a-holes. Shame on you." Connor's father replied, "That's completely wrong. Saying that discussion about the causes of the massacre is petty is exactly wrong. Trying to understand the causes of this tragedy is the only way to keep it from happening again, and keeping all the other children safe from this kind of crazy is the goal. How many more children have to die before we can have a rational discussion about this? Connor had also tweeted a few more times about guns, though nothing of significance. His Twitter or X bio read, he/him/anime fan/metalhead/leftist/I'm going to hell and I'm not coming back. He was right about something, and I know it's not Twitter anymore, but it feels more natural to call it that. Connor, though, would constantly retweet and like things about gun control, politics, and other random things. This included a decent amount of massacres. We'll talk about some things a bit later. In January of 2019, Connor was 24 years old, and he was still attending Sinclair College. He was in a social psychology class, and there was a girl in there named Adelia Johnson. They met in class, but started to become friendly as they would walk back to their cars in the college parking garage and laugh about conspiracy theories their professors said. Connor, from the beginning, told Adelia that he has bipolar disorder and possibly OCD. It's unclear as if he was ever diagnosed with anything. This pair would get along very well in the beginning, and Connor started to joke around with Adelia about his dark thoughts and how he wanted to hurt people. Adelia and Connor would start dating shortly after this, but their relationship was pretty secret. Adelia was engaged to another man at the time, but her fiancé knew about Connor. Their relationship was polyamorous, which basically just means each party had multiple partners. Now, Adelia and Connor's first date was at a bar, and a few hours in, he began to show her body camera footage of the Pittsburgh synagogue shooting. In 2018, a man named Robert Bowers went into the Tree of Life synagogue and murdered 11 people. Connor decided to show Adelia footage of it, but she wasn't too weirded out by it because in their social psychology class, they've talked about killers before. In either March or April of 2019, Adelia received a phone call from Connor while he was super drunk. He was in Illinois playing a gig with his band. Adelia said that Connor was someone who mumbled a lot and that his voice was deep, and when he got drunk, it made it even worse. Connor apparently told Adelia on the phone that he wants to hurt a lot of people, that he doesn't have any plans to do so yet. Adelia just accepted what he said and didn't really question it too much. In May of 2019, the couple had plans to get lunch one day, but Connor asked Adelia if they could make a pit stop to drop a letter off to one of his friends that just moved into the town. They then went and did that, but as they drove by the home, someone was outside doing yard work. Connor was upset because he wanted this to be a surprise, and so Adelia suggested that they could stop there again after lunch. After lunch, the couple stopped there again, but there was still someone outside doing yard work. Adelia told Connor to just deliver it anyway, and this is when Connor became frustrated. Adelia started to push hard about who this friend was when Connor eventually told her that the house was his ex-girlfriend's that he had found through a picture of hers on Facebook. Adelia asked Connor to read the letter, and it basically just said, "Welcome to the neighborhood. You can't outrun your past. Signed, your neighbor." Adelia was shocked by this and asked Connor about it and if he knew how messed up it was. Connor tried to play it all off as a joke, but Adelia wasn't laughing and wasn't budging. Connor then admitted to her that sometimes he gets uncontrollable urges to do things. He told her that one time he burned down an abandoned building with his friends, but after every time he did something bad, he'd feel terrible. Eventually, they drove away from the house and into a parking lot, put the letter into a hole, and lit it on fire. Immediately afterwards, Connor dropped Adelia off at home, and she knew right then and there that she had to break up with him, but she wanted to wait a few days to cool down. She also wanted to wait until her fiancé got back from a work trip. However, it was never able to get to that point. This is because Connor started to ask Adelia some very disturbing questions. He asked her how often her and her fiancé got down, and she told him that she's not comfortable answering that. Connor then asked Adelia if she ever thought of taking her own life, but he knew that she had before because they talked about it a few times. Adelia felt like Connor was playing some sort of mind games with her or something. She then told him that she feels like he's not ready for a relationship given his mental status. Adelia said to him that he needs to work more on himself and find different ways to cope so he wouldn't become so dependent on others. Connor replied back and said, "I hope you find peace and never have to stress about anything again." Now their relationship was over, but I'm gonna go over a few text messages sent from Adelia to her friends and also Connor. Well, first off, on May 20th of 2019, Adelia texted a friend and said, "I did not anticipate shooting a gun today." To which her friend replied, "You went to a shooting range?" And Adelia replied, "Yeah, with Connor." The friend replied, "Well, I figured that. How was it?" Adelia said, "It was okay. We shot a rifle that was quiet, so that was fine. But there were people shooting loud guns, and that bothered me. But he just took me out for ice cream, so I feel better." The friend asked, "Was it just the noise level that bothered you?" Adelia replied, "Yeah, I thought I would have more issues shooting a gun, but I didn't. I mean, I'm cool never doing it again. It's a very high chance that the rifle they used that day would eventually be used again." Another set of messages is from when Adelia was texting Connor and asked him, "Do you know tragedies from every city?" Connor replied by saying, "A fair bit of them, smiley face. Is that bad? LMAO. Adelia then said, "Little bit, LOL. Connor replied with LMAO, "No, totally normal, /S, which means sarcastic." Adelia replied, "LOL, LOL, LOL, LOL. Connor then said that he's just a fountain of joy and wonderful, not scarring knowledge. The last messages we'll go over is the day that Adelia broke up with Connor and texted her friend Heather. She said, "In other news, I broke things off with Connor, and now I'm scared that he might try to hurt me or stalk me." Heather replied, "Yikes, what's he done to give you that impression?" Adelia said, "Nothing to me, but the kinds of things that he says not directed towards me is spooky." Adelia and Connor, from this point forward, would basically completely cut off their contact. But one last thing she did say is that Connor told her on 2 separate occasions he put one of his guns into his mouth, but couldn't pull the trigger. Now, to touch on what Adelia said about them going to the gun range, Connor at this point owned multiple guns. I believe it was about 4 or so. They were all legally owned weapons, but he went to the gun range pretty frequently. Specifically, one of the guns he owned was an Anderson AM-15 223 pistol, and he bought it in early 2019 from an online store in Texas. Now, this is basically an AR-15, but with a shorter barrel. Connor purchased the gun legally, but he lied on the form when it asked if he was a habitual user, which he was. Earlier, I mentioned Connor had a friend named Ethan Colley, and they hung out very frequently. They did together and went to the gun range. Connor asked Ethan to buy him 3 things: an upper receiver for his AR-15, a 100-round double drum magazine, and body armor. Connor said that the reason he needed Ethan to buy it was because he wanted to hide it from his parents. In late May or early June of 2019, all of those items would arrive at Ethan's home and Connor went over there. They assembled the gun and Connor ended up taking everything with him. Only a few months later, Connor would randomly snap. On Saturday, August 3rd of 2019, a guy named Patrick Crucius killed 23 people at a Walmart in El Paso, Texas. It was racially motivated, and Connor had seen that it happened on Twitter. He replied to and liked a few tweets regarding the situation, but I don't have them because his account was deleted and barely anything was archived. This day, he also liked a tweet regarding gun control. A lot of his tweets had little hints to massacres, but normally he was saying something against them and against guns. Later in the day, still on August 3rd, Connor, one of his best friends, Chase, and his sibling Jordan all decided to go out drinking to have fun and eat food. Connor was the one who drove in his gray Toyota Corolla, and he parked near a few restaurants. The three then went to a bar called Blind Bob's, and they entered the building at 11:20 p.m. After getting a few drinks, taking some shots, and just chilling, at about 12:05 a.m. on August 4th, Connor by himself left Blind Bob's and decided to go to another bar across the street called Ned Pepper's. Here, Connor had a few conversations with random people, and at 12:38 a.m., he sent a text message to Chase telling both him and Jordan to come to Ned Pepper's. Chase replied back about 30 seconds later and said that him and Jordan are going to stay at Blind Bob's, but want to go grab tacos from the taco cart, and that he would like to leave in about an hour. The exact same time that Connor texted Chase, he was walking out of the front door, and surveillance footage shows him going back to his car. Connor, while at his car, went to his trunk, and inside was his AR-15, body armor, a double drum magazine, and about 250 rounds of ammunition. Connor put on all of his gear, a sweatshirt, a mask, and ear protection on, and he began to make his way to his desired destination. First, Connor walked down an alleyway, and he came into contact with a guy. The guy said hello to him, and Connor said hello back. The guy did notice everything he had on him, and he was carrying a gun, but it's unclear why Connor let this guy live. But Connor continued walking, and within a few moments, that guy who just came into contact with him heard a bunch of gunfire. Connor first encountered a guy named Saeed Saleh, sorry if I butchered that, very close to the alley, and he shot him 3 times and grazed him once. Saeed instantly died, but he wasn't alone. Connor basically just fired randomly into the crowd, and he was right near the taco truck. Connor, when he shot at Saeed, also happened to hit his sibling Jordan twice, and he didn't die right away. It said that Jordan was screaming. Also, Connor at this point shot his best friend Chase, who was right next to Jordan. Immediately, all hell broke loose, and everyone was running for their lives, and other people were shielding their loved ones. Connor started to walk very fast out of the alley, shooting as many people as he could. The time was basically exactly 1 a.m. when Connor began his rampage, and after shooting 27 total people, he was running over to the bar, Ned Pepper's, where there was hundreds of people inside. A lot of the people inside were running for their lives because of Connor, but as soon as Connor got outside of the bar, there was a huge police presence directly next to him. He was unaware or potentially didn't see the police, or maybe he just didn't care, but he tried to run inside of Ned Pepper's with his gun chasing after people. It's possible he had tunnel vision in this moment, but luckily the police stopped him right then and there after shooting a total of 66 shots and hitting him 30 times, grazing him 4 times. The security guard at Ned Pepper's, as soon as Connor was shot, went to his body, grabbed the AR-15, and started hitting him in the head with it, and then pointing the gun at him to make sure he was neutralized. At this point, Connor would have been dead, but shout out to that bouncer. His name is Jeremy Ganger, and his heroic acts actually saved a lot of people. But all in all, Connor killed 9 people and shot 27 in literally 32 seconds. From the time that he fired the first shot to the time he was stopped by police took half a minute. The police responded as fast as humanly possible, and unfortunately, it still wasn't fast enough. Thankfully, they did stop him when they did, though, because Connor was seconds away from entering a bar filled with hundreds of people, and he easily could have killed way more. Now, this entire event was most likely unplanned. Connor was very infatuated with massacres, and it's obvious several months before, he must have really put that thought into his brain, considering the fact that he had a friend buy him a 100-round drum magazine, body armor, and an upper receiver for his gun so his parents wouldn't know is quite telling of itself. There's zero knowledge about why Connor chose August 4th, but it's most likely because of the massacre that happened barely even 12 hours prior. Connor once again had interacted with a lot of tweets about the Texas massacre, and so it's theorized that pushed him to the edge. It was also stated that he most likely didn't purposefully shoot his sibling and best friend, but it's hard to believe that he didn't. Considering Connor told them to go to Ned Pepper's, but they told him they were going to the taco truck, and then Connor just so happens to open fire right next to the taco truck. And also, he told them to go to Ned Pepper's as he was leaving Ned Pepper's. That all seems pretty unlikely to me. What the reason that Connor snapped is, well, it'll never be known. All we can 100% for sure know is that he committed a very, very evil act for essentially no reason at all. Connor had alprazolam, or basically Xanax, in his body, cocaine, alcohol, and weed. All of those drugs and a combination of previous mental health issues like his suspected schizophrenia could possibly be attributed to this, but who really knows? One thing we do know is that Connor was an awful person who did something awful, and the only people that really matter in these situations are the ones he murdered and hurt. Ethan Colley, Connor's friend who bought the items, had zero idea Connor was going to do anything like this. He was basically clueless, but Ethan was sentenced to 32 months in prison in February of 2020 because he lied on a federal firearms form, and because of that was possessing illegal firearms. Basically, he was doing drugs for a long time, and when the police raided his home because of Connor, Ethan had weed and other drugs out, and yeah. The people that Connor murdered deserve to be remembered. Now, Megan Baby Chica Betts, or as they went by Jordan Kofer or Coffer, was 22 years old and siblings to Connor. They were apparently very close, and Connor was very protective over him. Jordan at the time was employed at Bed Bath & Beyond and was in college at Wright State University. Jordan was going to graduate with a bachelor's degree in earth science. Jordan was obsessed with rocks and really wanted to work for NASA. Jordan loved writing, friends, family, and was overall a very talented individual with a bright future. Saeed Salah was 38 years old and a loving husband, father, son, friend, and refugee from Eritrea. Saeed was a hard worker, a devoted husband, and he wanted to make a better life for himself and his family in America. They moved there only 2 years prior to this tragedy. Logan Michael Turner was 30 years old and a good friend and family member to many. He loved his job at Thaler Machine Company, and his boss said that he was a rising star there. Logan was incredibly kind, determined, and he enjoyed making people around him feel special. Nicholas Coomer was 25 years old and a resident of Washington, Pennsylvania. He was in Dayton for an internship at the time. Nicholas was dedicated to caring for others and was looking forward to beginning a career in cancer care. He would constantly volunteer at hospitals to help, and he was a sports fan and played many sports throughout his school career. Nicholas was a great guy who's very missed. Monica Brickhouse was 39 years old and a mother, wife, daughter, friend, and so much more. At the time, she was working as a recovery specialist and was an excellent worker who was always very positive. Monica was considered to be a team player and someone who had a huge personality and infectious smile. She had just moved back to Ohio from Virginia and was in the process of running her own business with a friend. I believe that friend's name was Nicole B. Curtis, and they were together on that night. They passed away together, side by side. Beatrice Nicole Warren Curtis was 36 years old and was a loving friend, daughter, aunt, and so on. She lived in Virginia Beach, Virginia, and lived a lovely life where she would help others and travel the world. Nicole was considered to be a leader and was loved by everyone. Nicole was looked at as being an angel and a kind, loving person who had so much more to give to the world. Thomas McNichols was 25 years old and a father of 4 children, a loving son, cousin, and way more. Thomas was looked at as having a heart of gold and was looked at as a true family man. Thomas was a provider for his family and was a gentle giant. He loved sports, watching cartoons, and he was a die-hard Cincinnati Bengals fan. Lois Snee Oglesby was 27 years old and lived in Vandalia, Ohio. She loved traveling and spending time with her family and children. Her laugh was so great that she could light up any room. Lois was a loving mother who put her children before anything, and their happiness was her #1 priority. Lois had dreams of becoming a pediatric nurse. Derek Ramon Fudge was 58 years old and had one son named Dion. At the time, the father and son were working on Dion's home, which was damaged by a tornado that happened 2 months earlier. On August 4th, they were in Dayton together when Connor came out of the alleyway and started shooting. They dropped to the ground, and Dion told his father that they need to get up and go, but unfortunately, Derek was shot multiple times and ended up dying in Dion's arms. So sad, and I pray that Dion has been able to find some peace. I hope that all 9 people who were murdered on this tragic day are resting peacefully, and that their families are doing all right as well. But anyways, thank you for watching this episode of High Time Crime. If true crime is your thing, then please like and subscribe because it's all we do. I also have an all-exclusive Patreon if you're interested in that. There's a bunch of tiers to choose from, and the third one allows for you to see a Patreon-only video, and that tier and the second one allow you to have your name at the end of each High Time Crime video. I hope you have a great rest of your day. Take care, friend.